maybe it's because we are seeing these movie versions where Jo and Laurie are so romanticized. And maybe it's also because of our culture, really, that when I first read the book the first times, and I thought it was a bit weird that Jo wanted to marry Laurie to Meg. And now I wonder, maybe it was really something that Louisa May Alcott didn't see there wasn't any problems for her if she really felt that for boys, and I think she did. I once read from one of her biographies that when she had this fling with Larry Wisniewski, they really did pranks together. Like, they loved pranking people, and that's just Jo and Laurie type of thing to do. I can't see anything romantic there, but it's one of those things that people just like to ignore.
Yes, I've never found in any romantic literature a hero and heroine linked together through pranking.
Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe it's just Jo and Laurie.
Yeah, that's it. And, I think maybe, too, now that we're discussing it a little bit more, that the difference in tone or mood between the first half and the second half of the book. The second half is such a stark contrast as far as lightness and energy, and there's still wit, and her writing style is still lively, but it's harder, it's sadder, it's darker. They're older, and so people definitely gravitate more toward the first half of the book and that relationship. They just can't let it go.
Yes, and it's interesting because one of my friends said this, that, she read the book after seeing the 2019 film, and then she was surprised because in this first part, there's nothing romantic between Jo and Laurie, and she was expecting things to be romantic because Greta Gerwig said so. But we know that Greta Gerwig lied to people, so none of that exists here. I think a lot of the movies, they kind of set people to disappointment when they want to romanticize Jo and Laurie, because there really isn't anything romantic between them.
Yeah, and I'd really like Greta to kind of point out any passage that suggests that. I don't think that she'll be able to do it.
No, she also said that Jo hated Germans, or Louisa May Alcott hated Germans. Yeah, another lie. None of that ever happens.
Well, that's just out-and-out propaganda.
I agree. And it's just these contradictory things that she said that never happens in the book. So I'm not surprised that people have such weird views about Little Women, because I don't think most people who write adaptations have actually read it.
Nor did people of that time wear Uggs in the snow.
I actually read from letters that Louisa May Alcott wrote with Maggie Lukens, the Lukens sisters. You know that one.
Hello, friends. It is Niina from the Little Woman podcast. Just to let you all know that the Little Woman podcast episode transcripts are now available as books. You can find them as paperbacks and ebooks. They are wonderful reading for all the fans of Louisa May Alcott. You can find all the links from the description. And now, back to the show.
No, they were like fans of her books. So the sisters, they had this letter exchange with Louisa May Alcott. And I read some of them, and they were really interesting because the girls were like, we were heartbroken that Jo rejected Laurie, and we were sad to see her grow and stuff like that. And then Louisa May Alcott answered, why is it that people think that Jo remains as a child when in the end of the book she's 30? And I thought that was interesting because people are so obsessed with Jo staying this teenager who, in my opinion, is not really a smart or admirable person, especially in this chapter. Little Woman Part 2 is really underappreciated because of that. People are so hanged on into things that I don't think are very admirable in the end.
And that's the whole point of the first half, isn't it? Even the second half, is that they're full of faults. Those are their burdens. The burdens they carry in their own pilgrimage to adulthood is that they have these faults. And I think if Laurie had been a part of that whole pilgrimage, if he was as aware of it, then maybe his burdens could have included, well, I'm spoiled, and it's easy for me to feel slighted, I take offense easily, among other things that I'm sure you could add a number of things that would be put into his knapsack as his burdens. But we don't have that experience of it being spelled out for us the way that we do for Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. And so we kind of have to do the work and put that together with all the clues that she leaves us, because we have to be a little more astute in our reading to understand Laurie's own arc. But it's all here.
Thank you so much for watching. Kimberly and I continue our chat next time. Take care and make good choices. Bye.
Because I have this distinguished memory of reading this chapter when I was 17, and I was mad for him for months, maybe years, because of this chapter. But it was also because I was 17 at the time, and I would very, very much relate to Meg. But it was much later when I read the book again, and I started to see, oh, he actually grows out of this. But definitely I had some resentment against Laurie at the time. When I have been speaking about this chapter in the podcast, I've had a lot of people saying that, oh yeah, when they read this part, it was weird for them how people could call Jo as a feminist because she doesn't really react in the way they want her to react. But that's really the whole point of the book, because Jo really grows to become a feminist in later novels. And we have characters like Fredrik and her mother who help her to become that person.
Yes, and Marmee also has Laurie pretty pegged. She's fully aware. She refers to him as a weathercock, and recognizes that he's pretty immature. And she steps up, though, and she is a good influence upon him. He would probably, and did, I think, accept, well, obviously, as this chapter shows us, he doesn't shake Marmee or go stomping off before she finishes telling him off in their private conversation. He becomes contrite. He thinks about it. She does a lot for him. This family is very important to Laurie and is an integral part of his maturation process. I think without them, he would have been just lost. He would have become like the king boy who gambled away the family's money or some of the family's money anyway. The king boy that was a member of the family that Meg is a governess to.
Laurie sees Marmee as, like a surrogate mother, but I think it's also, he doesn't stand against Marmee because I think deep down inside he knows that Marmee is actually the healthy mother figure for him, because she can put those boundaries that even his grandfather can't put on him. And she's like also one of those people who says no to him.
Yeah, She points out to him, you did wrong here, bud. And he has to take it. Well, he doesn't have to, but he does. To the best of his ability. I mean, as we read, we can see that he's still, vacillating.
Yes. Well, if the boy held his tongue because he'd promised and not from obstinacy, I'll forgive him. He's a stubborn fellow and hard to manage, said Mr. Lawrence, rubbing up his hair till it looked as if he'd been out in a gale and smoothing the frown from his brow with an air of relief. So am I, but a kind word will govern me, when all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't, said Jo, trying to say a kind word for her friend, who seemed to get out of one scrape only to fall into another. You think I am too kind to him, eh? Was the sharp answer. Oh dear, no, sir, you are rather too kind sometimes. And then just a trifle hasty when he tries your patience. Don't you think you are? Jo was determined to have it out now, and tried to look quite placid. She quaked a little after her bold speech. To her great relief and surprise, the old gentleman only threw his spectacles on the table with a rattle and exclaimed frankly, You are right, girl. I am. I love the boy, but he tries my patience past bearing, and I don't know how it will end, and if we go on so. I'll tell you, he'll run away. Jo was sorry for that speech the minute it was made. She meant to warn him that Laurie would not bear much restraint, and hoped he would be more forbearing with the lad.
Mr. Lawrence's ruddy face changed suddenly, and he sat down with a troubled glance at the picture of a handsome man which hung over his table. It was Laurie's father, who had run away in his youth and married against the imperious old man's will. Jo fancied he remembered and regretted the past, and she wished she had held her tongue. He won't do it unless he is very much worried, and only threatens it sometimes when he gets tired of studying. I often think I should like to, especially since my hair was cut. So, if you ever miss us, you may advertise for 2 boys and look among the ships bound for India. She laughed as she spoke, and Mr. Lawrence looked relieved, evidently taking the whole as a joke. You hussy, how dare you talk in that way? Where is your respect for me and your proper bringing up? Bless the boys and girls, what torments they are, yet we can't do without them, he said, pinching her cheeks good-humoredly. Go and bring that boy down to his dinner. Tell him it's all right, and advise him not to put on tragedy airs with his grandfather. I won't bear it. He won't come, sir. He feels badly because you didn't believe him when he said he couldn't tell. I think the shaking hurt his feelings very much. Jo tried to look pathetic, but must have failed, for Mr. Lawrence began to laugh, and she knew the day was won.
Is Mr. Lawrence like a businessman who owns cargo ships that take stuff to India and other parts of the world? So Laurie basically could travel to India with Jo in a ship. But they are way too young to do that. And honestly, I don't think Jo even would like to go.
She's so family-oriented, no matter how tempting an offer may be, the minute she remembers family, that's where she will be.
Yes. And even when she's in New York, which is kind of her big adventure, she really just hangs out with Fredrik there. Like, she doesn't go to do whatever people did in New York in 19th century.
Yeah, particularly once she ends her writing stint there. Then, he's pretty much her only society by choice.
Yes.
She likes how he grounds her. She feels connected to her family through him. The things that matter, that anchor her, that the family offers, religious-wise, moral-wise, he represents those things. And And it helps her so much.
Yes, and then Fredrik represents that kind of world that Jo is fascinated. Like Goethe and German literature and all these things that she's interested from. And it's kind of nice that I noticed here that Ode, Mr. Lawrence, and then Jo, they speak a lot about books. They speak about The Rambler and Boswell's Johnson. And it kind of reminded me how Louisa May Alcott wrote about her discussions about books with Emerson.
I have been wondering if Mr. Lawrence may be part of that. If Emerson might be represented by portions of Mr. Lawrence because of that.
I believe all these characters in Little Woman who sort of connect Jo and literature, like Fredrik and Ode, Mr. Lawrence, they have some kind of connection to Emerson, and it's not necessarily conscious thing from Louisa May Alcott, maybe more subconscious.
Yes, right. Although, I think in her later years when she was struggling with moods and trying to write that great piece that she always felt was on her horizon, never fully, I think, accepting the moral path for the young, as she put the Little Women series and the other books that she wrote for kids. Or younger people. She blamed Emerson for keeping her so bound to a certain kind of morality that should be fit into writing. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm just so almost constricted by it. And maybe she was, but clearly what she was able to do, probably because of it, isn't something I'm going to be doing any day soon in this lifetime. I mean, there's nothing wrong, as we were talking about earlier, with writing books for young people. As a matter of fact, I think that that's probably one of the most important artistic things that you could offer, are some good reading material for young people. We need more of it.
Yes. And it's kind of funny because then she also has written that Emerson was her Goethe and her biggest writing inspiration. So there's lots of contradictings there. When I have read Louisa May Alcott's adult books, I think they are some way moralistic babble as well, to a certain extent. But I think the children book structure was something that she found limited sometimes, which I understand, because I think Lucy Maud Montgomery also said something similar, that you cannot fully express yourself in those books that were meant for young audience.
I imagine it would be easier to write books for younger people as an author that is known for writing for adults than it would the other way around. Reese and Doc is known for his books for children. If he suddenly decided, I want to write an adult piece of fiction, it probably just wouldn't have as willing a readership. People would be like, what? But say if who's a good, if John Grisham decided, I'm going to write a children's book, and grabbed you to be the artist, it would probably do okay. So maybe in a way she got trapped. Even though she had those earlier successes with her thrillers, they were either anonymous or under Bernard, right? Her pen name. So, and she and her publisher went out of their way to create a persona that Louisa May Alcott was a brand. And it was a brand. for a moral path for the young.
Yeah, so in a way she kind of sold herself to the children book genre with that brand. So I wouldn't blame that much on Emerson.
No, she might have just been flailing. Why am I stuck in this? It's Emerson's fault.